Aries 17, two prim spinsters. Now these two old ladies didn't get married, and as a result of that they had less influence in the external world. They were not considered to have power, such as our culture, and they found society draining, robbing them of energy. So this is what we're looking at. Each of us at times, we find that we're impotent, we lack potency in the outer world for one reason or another. Nothing necessarily to do with our marital status. Generally speaking, it's because of other reasons. And we feel that we're not effective, very effective in the outer world. And it may be that we're tired, we're burned out, we've just done too much, we need to rest. It might be that simple, might be something else going on. But what this particular degree, Aries 17, is talking about is that there exists a kind of life which is a retreat from normal workaday busyness. And it is an entirely valid decision to do this, to retreat from mainstream, the hustle bustle of life, and to turn within, to just look at what's going on inside of yourself. We see, when we look out, the busyness of life is measured in terms of political ups and downs, changes in fashion, everybody going for fame and fortune and love affairs and seeking entertainments, and the use of drugs to get into altered states. All of this is going on out there. What's going on in there? Not inside the physical body. I'm not talking about your organs. I'm talking about even deeper inside. What has no physical representation at all. The sense you have of beingness. So the mystery of this sign, Aries 17, this degree, is to do with the study of being rather than doing. Mostly people focus on doing. But when we're on retreat, we focus on just being what we are, being who we are, being how we are. The fact that there are two prim spinsters means that there's a relationship, there's two of them doing this, so that there's a sense in which the solitude indicated by this sign is not loneliness. There is a sharing of solitude. Now, it may not be a person. You may not have a partner with whom to do this. That would be more complicated because usually a partnership includes emotional process and a relationship of a type that makes you bubble out of yourself and your sense of being into an interaction where action is indicated. And that's not what we're talking about here. These are two prim spinsters, that the sense is that they've had every conversation of meaning ever. They've discussed all of their ideas and their philosophies and their feelings so often that they really don't need to do it anymore. So they pretty much live in silence. They don't exchange more than the courtesies and the workaday practicalities, but they don't really discuss much more about who they are because they're concerned with working that out alone. Those of us on a spiritual path are invited often to go on retreat, to move away from our identity, which is based on doing, and find an identity which is our beingness. It takes some time to get used to retreat. You have to reprogram yourself and get used to an entirely unfamiliar rhythm. But when you do that, when you actually sink into that slow, quite monotonous rhythm where there's very little distraction, something occurs to you. You find a different aspect of yourself. It is not subject to the ups and downs of life, it is pretty flat. And that's good. You like that. It's undisturbed by emotionality. And when you're undisturbed by emotionality, the feelings that you've got become more sensitive. They're not blasted by ups and downs of anger and depression and desire and celebration. These are very overt, dramatic emotions that hide the more sensitive feelings that we have. When you access those sensitive feelings, you notice more refinement within your being. You notice a deeper appreciation of beauty. You are closer to soul consciousness, so you have a higher relationship with God. You understand things really clearly. You can see the difference between what matters and what doesn't matter. It has the equivalence really of climbing to the top of the mountain, and just somehow in the far distance you can see the busyness of the village, the marketplace down there, the city life or whatever, and you just see it as though ants were crawling around or driving in their cars. They're not real people, they're so far away. That's how it seems from the top of a mountain. And this is the sense we have of retreat. We move to the distant place where our perceptions are quite different. We can see how all of them down there are busy and lost in that busyness. It's like one of those movies that get sped up. You know, you watch a marketplace for 24 hours and you see it really fast, and everybody is behaving actually in the sense that they're not very individual. They're following the group dynamic. And people do live like that generally. Whereas if you retreat from that and you see what goes on, when you re-engage with that, if you do, you'll notice that something's changed. You see that the busyness isn't profound. It does not satisfy. Whereas if you are on retreat, then everything feels yours. It's fully satisfactory. The richness and the drama and the ups and downs, they're not so tempting when you have actually tasted the alternative. What develops from this way of being, especially if you make it into a lifestyle, a permanent lifestyle, you live in solitude a lot, perhaps most of the time. What develops when you do that is a sense of serenity and poise. Nothing much troubles you. Now, this is much more attractive when you become older. As you approach your last days on earth, peace and solitude are far more attractive than when you're young. And moving towards your death is, you know that it's better to do that quietly, with a sense of the authentic version of yourself, which cannot be understood if you're busy. You just don't get to hear your own inner voice because there's so much loudness in the world. So the two prim spinsters are serene, and they don't get excited, they don't get dramatic about anything. They just approach death with a sense of inviting it to come to them. Now, this mystery of approaching death with serenity does not only apply to death. You can approach any situation in the same way. Every situation we're in comes to an end. That's its death. Even if you're in your 20s, your relationship, your job, your current circumstances, it won't continue. certainly not in its present form. Maybe if it does continue indefinitely, it will not be in the same form. Something very significant dies. And the best way to approach that death is with poise. You can only master that mystery if you have practiced retreat.